When you see images from Syria, do you ever doubt yourself? Do you ever second guess the decisions you've made?
There are going to be some bad things that happen around the world, and we have to be judicious in thinking about, is this a situation in which inserting large numbers of U.S. troops will get us a better outcome, knowing the incredible sacrifices that will be involved?
That was, at the time, President Barack Obama telling me last year why he did not choose to retaliate against Assad during his administration. But President Trump received support for his actions this week from top Democrats, including Hillary Clinton and Chuck Schumer and many others. Much to discuss with this distinguished group we have with us today. Former Republican presidential candidate Rick Santorum from the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Jen Psaki, former White House Communications Director for President Obama. Bali Nasser, Dean of the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies. And Congressman Mike Rogers, former Republican chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Senator Santorum, is there any part of you that is worried at all that we are headed for any sort of a quagmire in Syria?
I think if you listen to Nikki Haley today, if you listen to the president, what President Obama just said is not the only alternative, which is a massive force of people going into Syria. I think what Donald Trump has indicated is they're going to do a proportional response. They're going to make sure that we know that America is engaged. But that doesn't mean, as Ed Markey was trying to say, that, regime change, we're going to have lots of troops. I don't think the president is interested in that at all. I think he's interested in making sure that America has influence and is going to use our power appropriately.
There were, as you noted on my show Friday, there are a lot of Obama administration officials who are happy about what President Trump did and had wished President Obama had done it in 2013. Why did he seem to see a more pinprick strike, for want of a better term, as not so much of an option, that it was either all in or nothing? Why was there no middle ground so much?
Well, and that reaction is pretty consistent with the reaction to military action in the short term throughout history by Democrats and Republicans, regardless of who's president. I would say President Obama had a different approach, certainly, than President Trump. One, he sought the authorization of Congress. Remember, he did support military authorization. There weren't the votes in the Republican-led House or the Democratic-led Senate. But the second is, he was a very deliberative president. He's somebody who spent time asking questions about the costs, the consequences, whether it would achieve the outcome. We're spending a lot of time now guessing what the strategy is here, what is next, what the diplomatic plan is. We heard different things from the Secretary of State and from the ambassador to the UN in the same day. So that tells us, I think, that there isn't actually a strategy, and that's not something President Obama would have accepted before moving forward.
So Anne-Marie Slaughter, who was President Obama's first-term chief of policy planning at the State Department under Hillary Clinton, recently praised President Trump for the missile strike. She said to Politico, quote, "I feel like finally we have done the right thing. The years of hypocrisy just hurt us all. It undermined the U.S. It undermined the world order." There does seem to be a real embrace of this move by President Trump by the quote-unquote foreign policy establishment.
Well, I think what President Trump did was to uphold international norms about chemical weapon conventions. I think across the world, everybody supports that idea. I think enforcing American red line beyond Syria is welcome news to countries in Asia, across the world. When President Obama did not enforce his red line, I remember I was in Asia, and Asian leaders were very worried of what kind of signal would that send to China and North Korea. So that part is welcome, that the United States actually is serious about the red line. And despite the America First rhetoric, that President Trump has decided that he's going to hold up international norms. The problem is that it doesn't actually amount to a change of situation on the ground in Syria. So the Assad and Iran and Russia have the upper hand on the ground in cleaning out Idlib and the areas that they want. They don't actually need air power to do that. It's just the war is going to be longer. And also for the past 2 years, Putin effectively has become the international actor that holds all the cards on Syria.
Yeah.
So everybody travels to Moscow to talk to him. I mean, the problem Secretary Kerry had is that Lavrov really didn't have to listen to him. We didn't have any leverage on the ground.
Right.
So the key issue is the administration willing to create actual leverage on the ground. Is it really willing to change the military calculus on the ground? Although these pinprick or even wider airstrikes will be symbolic of American power.
Yeah.
We're going from America first to being indispensable nation again, but it may not actually have a material impact on Syria.
Do you know what the strategy is? Do you have an idea of what the larger strategy is? Or is it just like do this one attack and then hope that will force a political solution?
Two things. One, this plan was actually developed about 4 or 5 years ago, including this particular air base. The option was laid on the table. Could you degrade Syrians' ability to deliver a chemical weapon? And there are certain specific pieces of equipment, certainly the aircraft, but other specific pieces of equipment that you would need to transfer and move chemical weapons from their storage facility to the aircraft. So all of that was laid out. So I thought what they have done is dusted off a little bit of these plans that have been underway for a very long time. It's just that President Obama decided not to do those. That, to me, was very important. I think it's done two things, and I think there is a broader strategy here. One, it has realigned us with our Arab League partners who have all but thought that they have given up on the United States being engaged in stopping what is the largest humanitarian crisis since the World War II. 13 million folks have been displaced, about refugees, about 5 million of them displaced outside the country. Huge problems for everybody, Europe, us, all across the region. Secondly, this is the one Russian reset that I think they're going to pay attention to.
So one of the risks of this, in terms of the politics of it, is that a lot of President Trump's supporters did not want him to get further involved in the Middle East. Take a listen to Nigel Farage. He's the former leader of the UK Independence Party who supported Trump, actively campaigning with him.
A lot of people who voted for Trump did so because they were very wary of the neocon agenda. They believe that persistent intervention in the Middle East over the last few years has made things worse, not better.
In addition, let me show you this tweet from Laura Ingraham, the conservative talk radio host. Quote, missiles flying, Rubio's happy, McCain ecstatic, Hillary's on board, a complete policy change in 48 hours.
Yeah, I don't buy into any of that. Look, I think this was about maintaining international norms about chemical weapons use. The president obviously was emotionally affected by this on his watch, and I think that's what you saw here. I don't think you're going to see a big policy change on Syria. I think there will be more engagement, in part because of what Mike mentioned, this refugee crisis. All of this ties into, in Trump's mind, I'm sure, immigration, the problem with the radical Islamists either coming to Europe or coming here, and the problem that Syria creates on that. But I don't think you're going to see Donald Trump dramatically engage in Syria. I think you're going to see more engagement, but not anything near what is being concerned about on the right.
Should this be a concern for him that some of his supporters in the conservative media and I presume conservative voters are distressed and think that his campaign has now been hijacked by the neocons or by Jared Kushner or whomever?
Sure. Well, I think the challenge for Donald Trump speaking broadly about his politics is that his approval rating is below 40%. That while that is not the totality of his support that led him into office, certainly it's a portion of it. And what he hasn't really adjusted to is what every president has to do, which is to figure out how to work with people you disagree with who may disagree with you. We don't know if this is a part of a larger strategy. If you listen to Nikki Haley, you think maybe it is, or maybe there's more military action to come. We don't know. But the problem is he doesn't have a lot of space to move around or expansion options, I would say.
You tweeted that the Obama doctrine is dead. What is replacing it? What is the Trump doctrine? Do we have any idea?
Well, I think it's evolving, and I think that's what everybody wants to figure out. That was this a limited strike? Is there a bigger agenda for Syria? And also, what are the conditions under which this president may use military strikes in South China Sea, in North Korea? I mean, President Obama made it very clear that we don't get engaged in these sorts of things, and we would resist getting engaged in any kind of a conflict where we cannot articulate what is our national security interest.
There is Mike, right now, a lot of palace intrigue about Steve Bannon versus Jared Kushner. It's normally the kind of story that I don't really particularly pay a lot of attention to, except they are two completely different worldviews. Steve Bannon, nationalistic, likes to blow up institutions, not literally, and Jared Kushner, who apparently Bannon and the like call a globalist internally, a New Yorker, a Democrat. This is a fight that actually matters in terms of what happens to the country.
Listen, every president has really gone through some early stage transitions. Clinton did it, Reagan did it, George W. Bush did it. Nothing works exactly the way you see it when you walk into office. So there are some power centers here. We've said this before, that they need to work out. They've got to work out these power centers. The sooner they do that, the better. I think we'll be fine. I don't see any massive disruption of their formulating a policy. This was a good example of that. You had an issue that needed some attention. It needed a presidential decision. It came in the front end of the front office of the National Security Council. It came out what I would argue is the right decision. It was limited. It was calculated. And I think you'll find that this stuff will work its way out in the months ahead.